The music cut off right as my mother whispered in my ear, "When the papers are signed?" Then the slap exploded across my face in front of over 100 guests. I stood in the middle of the wedding hall we'd put $15,000 down on, my cheek burning, and realized they didn't just want to cancel the wedding. They were trying to change the name on my house deed to theirs. The photo booth camera kept rolling, capturing every word from my mother's lips and my father's eyes darting to the contract hidden under the tablecloth. I swallowed the blood at the corner of my mouth, smiled at the MC, and silently counted down 3, 2, 1. My turn. My name is Avery Monroe, and I've survived roadside bombs in Afghanistan, but nothing prepared me for the ambush at my own engagement party. The Colfax Hotel's ballroom sparkled with fairy lights we'd spent 3 months choosing. Nathan stood beside me, his engineer's hands steady on my waist as the MC raised his champagne glass. 200 guests quieted, waiting for our speech. That's when Linda I stopped calling her mom in my head, years ago materialized at my elbow like smoke. "Sweetheart, your veil's crooked." Her manicured fingers pulled me toward the photo booth corner, away from Nathan's confused expression. The booth's red recording light blinked steadily. "Good." "When the papers are signed," she hissed, her breath hot with champagne and entitlement, "I'll save you from this mediocre engineer and his tract house dreams. You think you're better than us after everything we've done." The slap came disguised as an accident, her diamond ring catching my cheek as she adjusted my grandmother's veil. The crack echoed off the marble walls. Conversations died. Forks froze midway to mouths. "Oh my God, Avery!" Linda's voice pitched high, performing shock. "I'm so sorry, honey. My bracelet caught blood pooled in my mouth where my teeth cut the inside of my cheek." Nathan started forward, but I raised one finger. "Wait." Through the ringing in my ears, I heard the photo booth's mechanical whir, still recording. The wireless mic clipped to my dress, supposedly for the speeches captured every syllable. Howard emerged from behind the gift table, his gray suit impeccable, his intentions anything but. I watched him slide a manila folder under the linen tablecloth, next to what looked like our guest book, the same folder I'd seen on his desk last week, labeled Stonefield Property Transfer in his cramped handwriting. The house I'd bought with my VA loan, my deployment savings, my blood and sweat they wanted it gift-wrapped with a bow. "Let me get you some ice," Nathan offered, his voice strained. Poor Nathan, still thinking this was about wedding stress, about normal family drama. He hadn't grown up with parents who kept spreadsheets of emotional debts, who calculated love in compound interest. "I'm fine," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. My voice came out steady, controlled. 5 years of military bearing good for something. "Just a little accident. Mom gets excited at parties." Linda's smile tightened. She knew that tone. The one I'd learned from her? Actually, sweetness covering steel, poison wrapped in pastry. "We should sign the guest book," Howard announced, appearing with the folder now mysteriously incorporated into a leather-bound album. "Before everyone gets too drunk to write straight." His laugh sounded like gravel in a garbage disposal. The crowd tittered nervously. Someone restarted the music Ed Sheeran, because of course. Nathan's mother pecked at her salmon, pretending not to notice the red mark blooming across my cheek. My Aunt Diane filmed everything on her phone, probably already composing the family group text. But I saw Marisol near the bar, her legal pad discreetly out, pen moving. Officer Dylan Hart, off duty but alert, set down his beer. The photo booth kept its mechanical rhythm, documenting everything. "Actually," I said, stepping back from Howard's reach, "I think we should do the speeches first, while everyone's still coherent." I touched my cheek deliberately, letting the overhead lights catch the swelling. "And while I still look presentable for photos." Linda's jaw clenched. Howard's folder hand twitched. They'd practiced this ambush, I realized, rehearsed the public signing. The witnesses who'd see me voluntarily put pen to paper. The slap was just to disorient me, make me vulnerable, eager to please. 3 years of therapy after my discharge had taught me to recognize the pattern, destabilize, isolate, extract compliance, rewrite history. They'd been running this playbook since I was 7, but I wasn't 7 anymore. I pressed my tongue against the cut in my mouth, tasting copper and clarity. The photo booth clicked. The mic recorded. Eli Grant, my forensic accountant, stood near the exit with his phone out, probably already accessing the cloud backup of our security footage. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, taking the microphone from the MC. Thank you for joining us tonight. Before we continue the celebration, there's something important we need to address. Linda stepped forward. Avery, sweetheart, you're overwhelmed? No, I said simply. I'm perfectly clear. The room held its breath. Nathan found my free hand, squeezed once, not to stop me to show he was with me. That's when I knew we'd make it through this. Howard's face flushed purple. Avery Monroe, you will not, my name, I said into the microphone, each word a nail in their coffin, is Avery Monroe. I bought my house. I earned my degree. I served my country. And tonight, you're all about to witness exactly who my parents really are. The music stopped. The photo booth kept recording. My turn had begun. The microphone felt cold in my hand, but my memories burned hot. 24 years of conditioning doesn't break easily. It shatters all at once, usually at the worst possible moment. When I was 7, I began, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. My mother made me return a birthday gift from my best friend because it wasn't expensive enough to reflect our family's standing. When I was 12, my father forged my signature on honor roll certificates to claim a tax credit for gifted children. I thought this was normal. Linda's hand shot out toward the microphone cord. Nathan's mother, Beth, surprisingly, blocked her path. Let her speak, Beth said quietly. The first time I realized other families didn't operate like Fortune 500 companies was in basic training. My bunkmate, Rodriguez, called her mom every Sunday just to laugh about nothing. No agenda. No quarterly performance reviews disguised as dinner conversation. After my second deployment, I continued, watching Howard's knuckles whiten as he gripped the folder. I saved $43,000, combat pay, hazard pay, living like a monk in Kandahar. I came home and bought a house, a small 2-bedroom in Stonefield, using my VA loan benefit. The house wasn't much 100 square feet. Original 60s kitchen, popcorn ceilings I'd been slowly scraping off. But it was mine. The first thing I'd ever owned that Linda couldn't redecorate or Howard couldn't leverage. That's when the requests started. I pulled out my phone, swiped to the screenshots I'd been saving for 2 years. Sweetheart, just put Dad on the deed temporarily, for tax purposes. Avery, if you really loved us, you'd understand why we need our names on the mortgage. You're being selfish with family assets. Family assets. My combat pay. My night terrors. My assets. Howard stepped forward, his salesman smile plastered on. Avery's been under a lot of stress planning the wedding. The wedding you insisted on controlling. I cut him off. The one where you changed the venue 3 times because the first 2 didn't have the right optics for your business associates. The one you're billing to my credit cards while shuffling money through your LLC. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Linda's cousin Margaret actually dropped her wine glass. Let me tell you about Pierce Family Services. LLC, I said, tilting my phone toward the crowd. Incorporated 3 months after I announced my engagement. Sole members Howard and Linda Pierce. Mysterious deposits totaling $85,000, all traced back to the joint wedding account Nathan and I opened. Nathan's sharp intake of breath told me this was news to him too. I'd been protecting him from the worst of it, thinking I could handle my parents alone. Another pattern learned in childhood: never show weakness, never ask for backup. But here's the masterpiece, I continued, adrenaline making my hands steady despite the throbbing in my cheek. 2 weeks ago, my mother sent me an email about napkin colors. Attached was a PDF of invitation designs. Hidden on page 37 of that PDF was a power of attorney document, granting them full control over my property and finances. Marisol held up her legal pad, showing me she'd gotten every word. Dylan Hart had moved closer to the exit, blocking Howard's potential escape route. "You want to know what kind of parents I have?" My voice cracked slightly, years of suppressed rage finally breaking through. "The kind who charged me rent at 16 while claiming me as a dependent for tax breaks. The kind who took out credit cards in my name when I was deployed, maxing them out and destroying my credit. The kind who told relatives I was mentally unstable from PTSD when I started saying no to them." "You ungrateful," Linda started. "I'm not finished." The command voice I'd learned as a sergeant shut her down. "Every family gathering, you told people Nathan was controlling me, that he was isolating me from family. You, who installed tracking apps on my phone until I was 25. You, who showed up at my workplace when I didn't respond to texts within an hour." The room was so quiet I could hear the photo booth's mechanical breathing. Nathan's hand found mine again, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, our signal for, "I'm here, you're safe." "Last month," I said, pulling out the final piece of evidence. "My mother called my boss at Northridge Defense Logistics, told him I was having a mental breakdown, suggested maybe I needed extended leave. My security clearance was nearly revoked. My career almost ended. Why? Because I wouldn't sign your papers." Howard's face had gone from purple to white. He knew what came next. "Ruth Ellison is here tonight," I announced, finding the elderly woman at table 12. "She was my first landlord in Stonefield. Ruth, would you please tell everyone what Linda Pierce asked you about last month?" Ruth stood slowly, her voice clear and indignant. She wanted to know if there was any way to transfer a property deed without the owner's knowledge. Said her daughter was mentally compromised and needed protecting. I told her that was fraud and threw her out of my office. The folder in Howard's hands might as well have been on fire. He dropped it, papers scattering across the marble floor. The power of attorney document landed face up. My name typed in, but the signature line blank, waiting for tonight's ambush. "This is what love looks like in the Pierce family," I said, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper, the microphone carrying every word. "Contracts, manipulation, slaps disguised as accidents." I touched my swelling cheek again, making sure everyone saw. "But I'm done being their investment property. Tonight, everything changes." The paper trail started 3 months ago, the day Linda suggested we use a joint account for wedding expenses. "It's easier for tracking," she'd said. Her smile practiced and poisonous. What she meant was easier for stealing. "Eli," I called out to the crowd, "would you mind sharing what you found?" Eli Grant stepped forward, his tablet already displaying the forensic accounting report on the ballroom's projection screen. The guests turned in their chairs, watching my family's fraud unfold in real time. "Pierce Family Services, LLC was incorporated 92 days ago," Eli began, his voice clinical. "Within 72 hours, it received its first transfer $15,000 from the Monroe Brooks wedding account, listed as venue deposit. The Colfax Hotel's actual deposit was $8,000. The $7,000 difference went to pay Howard Pierce's gambling debt at the Monarch Casino." Howard lunged for the projection equipment. Dylan Hart stepped smoothly into his path, off-duty authority radiating from his stance. "Sir, I'd step back if I were you." "Over 12 weeks," Eli continued, swiping through bank statements. $85,000 moved through Pierce Family Services. The pattern was sophisticated transfers timed to coincide with Avery's pay deposits. Amounts just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Descriptions matching real wedding vendors. The screen showed a flowchart that looked like a spider web, each strand another theft. The Riverside Flowers invoice for $8,000. They only received $3,000. Pinnacle Photography's $12,000 package paid $5,000. The rest diverted. Every single vendor was partially paid, with the difference flowing to Pierce Family Services. Nathan's mother, Beth, stood up, I wondered why the flower arrangements seemed sparse for the price you mentioned. But here's the masterpiece, Eli said, pulling up an email chain. Linda Pierce created duplicate vendor email accounts. When Avery emailed Beautiful Brides at Gmail, Linda intercepted it through beautifulbride@gmail no es. She negotiated with vendors separately, pocketing the differences. My phone buzzed. A text from Marisol. Recording everything. This is golden. The paper trail gets better, I said, taking back the microphone. Dad, remember when you insisted on helping with my taxes last year? You claimed I owed $12,000 in penalties for early withdrawal from military retirement. There was no withdrawal. There were no penalties. But there was a check written to Howard Pierce, signed with my forged signature. The screen displayed the check, my signature clearly different from every other document. Digital forensics are fascinating, Eli added. The PDF of the power of attorney document embedded in Linda's email about napkin colors created on Howard's computer, modified 17 times, each version more aggressive in scope. The final version would have given them complete control over Avery's assets, including the ability to sell her house without her knowledge. Linda found her voice, shrill and desperate. You're twisting everything we were trying to help Avery's not capable of managing. Not capable. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I managed supply lines in a combat zone. I tracked millions of dollars in military equipment. I have a security clearance that required financial audits going back 10 years. But sure, I can't handle my own house payments. Ruth Ellison stood again. If I may add something, Linda came to my office 3 times. First, she wanted to know about quitclaim deeds. Second, about powers of attorney for mentally incompetent adults. The third time, she offered me $5,000 to testify that Avery seemed unstable when she rented from me. You bitter old woman, Howard started. I have the security footage, Ruth said calmly. And the check she tried to write from Avery's account? My hands were shaking now, but not from fear, from rage, clean and clarifying. Should we discuss the phone calls to my command, the anonymous tips that I was selling military supplies, the investigation that nearly ended my career until they traced the calls to your cell phone? Dad. The room erupted in murmurs. Someone, I think Nathan's uncle, actually applauded. The credit cards, I continued, pulling up my credit report on my phone. 6 cards opened in my name while I was deployed, maxed out, default notices sent to your address, not mine, collections calls you never mentioned. My credit score dropped 300 points. When I tried to get the VA loan, I almost didn't qualify for my own benefit. The worst part, I said, my voice breaking slightly. You told everyone I was damaged. That PTSD made me paranoid, that Nathan was feeding my delusions. You created a narrative where any defense I mounted was proof of my instability. Marisol approached with a stack of papers. These are cease and desist orders, already filed with the court as of 6:45 p.m. this evening. Any attempt to access Avery's accounts, property, or credit will result in immediate criminal charges. You can't, Linda stepped forward. Actually, Dylan Hart said, producing his badge. She can, and based on what I've just witnessed and heard, I'll be filing a report for assault, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse, yes, attempting to bribe Mrs. Ellison counts. The projection screen changed one more time. Eli had pulled up the Colorado statute on financial fraud. The attempted theft of $85,000, plus the forged checks, plus the credit fraud, you're looking at 20 to 40 years. Each. Howard's legs gave out. He collapsed into a chair, the folder of fraudulent documents scattered around him like confession. But my favorite discovery, I said, smiling for the first time all evening. The phone you gave me for my birthday. Mom, the one with the tracking app. It's been recording every conversation within 10 feet, including the one 3 days ago where you practiced your crying performance for tonight, coaching Dad on how to console you while sliding the papers in front of me. I hit play on my phone. Linda's voice filled the ballroom. When she's upset about the slap, Howard comes in with the papers. She'll sign anything to make the scene stop. We'll have the house by midnight." The recording continued. "That little bitch owes us. We gave up everything for her." Howard's voice responded, "Once we have the house, we leverage it for the business loan. She can live in that engineer's apartment." The ballroom was dead silent except for the recording. "Every conversation," I said, "every plan, every lie, all legally recorded in a one-party consent state." Linda's face had gone gray, her perfect makeup running in streaks. "The evidence is already uploaded to 3 cloud servers and my attorney's office," I announced. "The forensic accounting report was filed with the IRS an hour ago. The State Fraud Division received copies 30 minutes ago. 3 weeks before the engagement party. I'd sat in Marisol's office with a war plan that would have made my commanding officers proud. Every contingency mapped, every move anticipated, every ally positioned. They'll try to ambush you publicly," Marisol had predicted, her legal mind seeing patterns I'd missed. "Narcissists need an audience. They'll want witnesses to your voluntary signature." Oh, she was right. The engagement party was perfect emotional vulnerability, social pressure, alcohol flowing. They'd counted on my military training to make me avoid a scene, to maintain composure at all costs. They'd forgotten that same training taught me to turn ambushes into advantages. "Nathan," I'd said that night 3 weeks ago, after showing him everything, "I need you to know what's coming." He'd been quiet for exactly 17 minutes, reading through the evidence. Then, "What do you need me to do?" Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "Maybe we should try talking to them." Just tactical acceptance. That's when I knew I'd chosen the right partner. The plan was surgical first. Document everything. Eli had installed forensic software on my devices, creating an unbreakable chain of custody for every email, text, and transaction. The wedding account was bait. We'd deposited money specifically to track where it went. Second, control the battlefield. The Colfax Hotel's ballroom had 14 security cameras, all backing up to the cloud. The photo booth we'd insisted on professional-grade equipment with continuous recording capability. The DJ's wireless mic system connected to Eli's recording setup in the van outside. Third, position assets. Dylan Hart was invited as Nathan's family friend, but we'd briefed him on the situation. His presence as law enforcement, even off-duty, would prevent physical escalation. Ruth Ellison received a personal invitation with a handwritten note. "I may need a character witness." She'd understood immediately. Marisol had prepared 3 sets of documents restraining orders, cease and desist letters, and criminal complaint forms, all pre-filled, requiring only signatures and timestamps. The court's e-filing system meant everything could be submitted instantly from her phone. "The trick," Marisol had explained, "is to let them commit the crime fully. Attempted fraud is harder to prosecute than fraud in progress." So we'd waited, watched Linda plant her PDF bombs in emails about centerpieces, tracked Howard's shuffling of funds through his LLC, documented their rehearsals. Yes, they actually rehearsed. The tracking app on the phone they'd given me was supposed to monitor my movements. Instead, it became our surveillance device in their home. Nathan had played his part perfectly, appearing supportive but slightly overwhelmed, feeding their narrative that he was weak, manipulatable. His engineering mind had actually designed the money flow tracking system Eli used, but they'd never suspect the mediocre engineer of such sophistication. Phase 1. I'd told my team 3 days ago. They approach with the papers. Phase 2. They create emotional disruption, probably physical. Phase 3. They press for signature while I'm vulnerable. "How do you know they'll get physical?" Nathan had asked. 27 years of data, I'd replied. Linda's violence escalates with financial pressure. Howard just filed for bankruptcy protection on 2 of his businesses. They're desperate. The photo booth had been Nathan's stroke of genius. "People let their guard down around photo booths," he'd said. "They think it's just for fun, not evidence collection." We'd paid extra for the model with continuous recording and cloud storage. The DJ, Marcus, was another veteran Marines. Not Army, but we don't hold that against them. When I'd explained the situation, he'd immediately offered to help. My mom went through something similar with her family. He'd said, "I've got your six." Marcus had rigged the entire sound system for instant override. One hand signal from me, and he could cut the music, activate all mics, and project anything from my phone to the screens. Even the seating chart was tactical. Allies positioned at key tables, blocking exits and sightlines. Nathan's family, who'd grown to love me despite Linda's poison, formed a protective barrier near the head table. My army buddies, invited as friends from work, created a secondary perimeter. "If this goes sideways," Rodriguez had said when I'd briefed her, "we extract you cleanly, no questions asked." "It won't go sideways," I'd promised. "We're going to let them extract themselves." The financial manipulation had been the easiest to document. Howard was sloppy when desperate, and Linda's ego made her overconfident. They'd left digital fingerprints everywhere, IP addresses, metadata, timestamp inconsistencies that screamed forgery. "The beautiful thing," Eli had explained, showing me the forensic accounting charts, "is they think they're clever. Smart criminals are careful. People who think they're smart are evidence machines." We'd even anticipated the slap, though we'd expected it during the signature attempt, not before. Linda had a tell she twisted her wedding ring 3 times before striking. I'd seen it when I was 8, 12, 15, 19. The photo booth caught her doing it tonight, right before the accident. "You could just confront them privately," Nathan had suggested once, wanting to spare me the public ordeal. "No," I'd said. "They've spent my whole life making me look crazy in private while playing perfect in public. This time, everyone sees who they really are." The backup plans had backup plans. If they'd tried to run, Dylan would stop them. If they'd destroyed the physical documents, we had digital copies. If they'd claimed the recordings were fake, we had blockchain verification timestamps. But my favorite contingency was Aunt Diane, Linda's own sister, who'd been documenting Linda's lies for 40 years, waiting for the right moment. She'd brought receipts literally, photos of Linda's first marriage certificate, the one she claimed never existed, bank records from when Linda embezzled from their mother's estate, the arrest record from Linda's DUI that she'd paid to expunge. "I've been waiting for you to fight back," Diane had told me last week. "I've got a storage unit full of ammunition." The plan was beautiful in its completeness. We hadn't just prepared for a battle, we'd prepared for a war crimes tribunal. "Ready?" Nathan asked now, as the ballroom held its breath, the evidence displayed for all to see. "Ready," I said. "Time for the killing blow." "Let's discuss the signing ceremony you had planned," I said, picking up the scattered power of attorney documents from the marble floor. The papers felt like evidence at a crime scene which, technically, they were. Linda lunged forward, trying to snatch them. "Those are private family documents." Family. I held the papers high, letting the overhead lights illuminate the watermark of forgery so poor even the hotel staff could see it from their stations. "Let's read what family means to you. Mom." I cleared my throat theatrically. "I, Avery Monroe, being of questionable mind and judgment, hereby grant complete and irrevocable power of attorney to Howard and Linda Pierce, including but not limited to the right to sell, transfer, or encumber any property, access all financial accounts, make medical decisions, and sign any legal documents in perpetuity." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a champagne glass. "Questionable mind and judgment," I repeated, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "That's what you think of your daughter who served 3 tours, who has a security clearance, who manages million-dollar defense contracts." Howard scrambled toward the documents. "You don't understand the context." The context, I laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "Let's discuss context." "Nathan, would you please show everyone what we found hidden in the guest book?" Nathan opened the leather-bound album Howard had been pushing. Between pages of well wishes were 6 different signature pages, each more aggressive than the last. Property deeds, loan applications, life insurance beneficiary changes, all requiring only my signature to complete their theft. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, You were invited here not just to celebrate an engagement, but to witness what my parents hoped would be the legal execution of my financial independence. Marcus, the DJ, perfectly timed his intervention, the screens around the ballroom lit up with security footage from 40 minutes ago. There was Linda, practicing her approach in the bathroom mirror. Sweetheart, just sign here no. Sound more caring, sweetheart. Your father and I only want what's best. The footage cut to Howard in the parking lot. On his phone. Yes, the notary is here, hidden in the catering staff. Once she signs, we file immediately. The house is ours by morning. You recorded us without permission, Linda shrieked, her perfectly composed facade finally cracking completely. Colorado is a one-party consent state, Marisol said calmly, stepping forward with her phone already recording. Additionally, the Colfax Hotel posts clear signage about security cameras in all common areas. You had no reasonable expectation of privacy. But the best part, I continued, pulling out my phone, is this recording from 3 days ago. Your practice session at home. I hit play. The ballroom filled with Linda's voice. When she's crying from the slap, I'll comfort her. Mothers know how to make daughters feel guilty. We sacrificed everything for you. Don't you want to help your family? She'll sign anything to make the pain stop. Howard's voice responded, Make sure the notary stays close. We need this witnessed and filed before she sobers up. Linda, what if Nathan interferes? Howard, he won't. He's weak. Probably gay. If you ask me, no real man would tolerate Avery's independence. Nathan actually laughed at that, a genuine, amused sound that made several guests chuckle despite the tension. He squeezed my hand and whispered, Their gaydar is as broken as their moral compass. The recording continued. Linda, once we have the house, we can take another mortgage. She'll never know until it's too late. Howard, the VA will come after her for loan fraud. Linda, so she can live with the consequences of trusting the wrong people. The ballroom was dead silent except for the recording. The wrong people, I repeated, letting those words hang in the air. You mean my parents? Dylan Hart stepped forward, his official notebook out. Ma'am, I need you to know that what I just witnessed constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud. Elder financial abuse, yes. Attempting to defraud a veteran counts under Colorado law and assault. You have the right to remain silent. We're her parents. Howard exploded, his face purple with rage. We have every right to protect our investment. He stopped, realizing what he'd said. Investment, I repeated softly. There it is. The truth. Finally. I turned to address the room, my voice steady despite years of pain trying to claw its way out. I was never a daughter. I was an investment, a retirement plan, a vessel for their ambitions. Every birthday was a loan. Every Christmas gift came with interest. Every moment of affection was a transaction recorded in their mental ledger. Aunt Diane stood up. I have something to add. She pulled out a folder thick with photos and documents. Linda, you've been telling everyone Avery abandoned you, that she's ungrateful. Should we discuss how you stole Mother's jewelry when she was dying, how you tried to sell Avery's grandmother's house while she was deployed, how you filed for emergency conservatorship over Avery while she was overseas, claiming she was killed in action? You were declared my next of kin, I added, the final piece clicking into place. If I had died in Afghanistan, everything would have gone to you, but I came home. Inconvenient, wasn't it? Linda's mask finally shattered completely. You ruined everything you were supposed to die over there. The insurance would have paid off Howard's debts, saved the business. But no, you had to survive. Had to come back with your hero complex and your government benefits and your perfect little life. The ballroom gasped collectively. Several people had their phones out, recording everything. She was supposed to die, someone whispered. Her own mother wanted her dead for insurance money. Howard tried damage control. She doesn't mean that. I absolutely mean it, Linda screamed. Do you know how much a military death benefit pays $400,000 tax-free? We could have been set for life, but she had to survive, had to come back and lord her service over us. Nathan stepped protectively closer to me, but I didn't need protection anymore. Linda had just confessed to the one thing I'd never been able to prove, that their love had a price tag, and I was worth more dead than alive. Get it all on record, I told Dylan, who was already writing furiously. Especially the part about wanting me dead for insurance money. Marcus cued the screens again. This time, it showed Howard's browser history from his laptop screenshots Eli had pulled during his investigation. Military death benefits. How to file for SGLI insurance. Can parents claim veteran children as dependents? VA loan fraud penalties. How to contest a will if no will exists. The searches dated back 5 years to my first deployment. You've been planning this since I enlisted, I said, the final piece of horror clicking into place. You encouraged me to join not for college benefits, but for death benefits. The room erupted. Someone's grandmother actually stood up and threw her dinner roll at Linda, shouting something in Italian that probably wasn't complimentary. Sign the papers now. Linda grabbed the power of attorney, shoving it at me. You owe us, sign them. She raised her hand to slap me again. This time, I caught her wrist. No more, I said, my grip firm but controlled on Linda's wrist. The entire room held its breath as I stood, facing the woman who gave birth to me but never learned to love me. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, releasing her wrist and stepping back to address the room. What you're about to witness is the complete legal and financial dismantling of Howard and Linda Pierce. Marisol. Marisol stepped forward with her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Filing now. Restraining orders. Submitted to Denver County Court at 8:27 p.m. Cease and desist for financial harassment. Filed. Notice of intent to pursue civil damages. Filed. Criminal complaint for assault, battery, and attempted fraud. Officer Hart. Dylan Hart moved in, his backup already entering the ballroom he'd called them during the revelations. Linda Pierce, Howard Pierce, you're under arrest for assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted financial elder abuse of a protected class citizen. Protected class? Howard sputtered. Veterans. Mr. Pierce, Dylan said, producing handcuffs. In Colorado, attempting to defraud a veteran of their VA benefits is a felony enhancement. But I wasn't done. This was the 3-pronged attack I'd orchestrated, and we were only at prong 1. Eli, I called out, please execute the financial freeze. Eli's fingers danced across his tablet. Submitted to Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and First National, based on evidence of ongoing fraud. All accounts associated with Pierce Family Services, LLC, are temporarily frozen pending investigation. The Colorado Department of Revenue has been notified of tax fraud. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division received our package 10 minutes ago. The screens around the ballroom showed a cascade of confirmations emails, automated responses, case numbers being generated in real time. You can't do this, Howard screamed, struggling against Dylan's grip as the handcuffs clicked. That's our money. Actually, I said, pulling up my phone, let's discuss whose money it really is. Eli, show them the full forensic accounting. The screen filled with a spider web of transactions going back 3 years. Not just the wedding funds everything. Every birthday check I'd sent home that mysteriously never got cashed but showed up in their account. Every loan they'd begged for that was never repaid. Every credit card they'd opened in my name. Total theft over 7 years, $347,000, Eli announced. That's not including interest, penalties, and credit damage. But here's my favorite part, I said, walking toward my parents as more officers entered the ballroom. Remember that life insurance policy you took out on me? The one you've been paying premiums on for 5 years, waiting for me to die. Linda's face went white. Turns out, forging someone's signature on a life insurance application is fraud, but continuing to pay premiums while expressing hope for that person's death, that's conspiracy to commit murder for financial gain. The FBI takes a special interest in those cases. FBI! Howard's voice cracked. "Oh, yes," Marisol confirmed, reading from her phone. "The Denver field office confirmed receipt of our evidence package at 8:31 p.m. Agent Martinez will be in touch within 24 hours. The room was spinning with activity now. Hotel security had arrived to secure the scene. Guests were recording everything. The photo booth continued its mechanical clicking, documenting every second. "Nathan," I said, turning to my fiancé, "would you please show everyone the final exhibit?" Nathan pulled out a manila envelope not unlike the one Howard had brought, but this one was legal. 3 days ago, Avery and I went to the courthouse. We filed a civil suit against Howard and Linda Pierce for intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. We're seeking full restitution plus punitive damages. The amount, someone called out from the crowd, $1.2 million, Nathan said calmly. The exact amount they would have collected if Avery had died in Afghanistan, $400,000 in death benefits, plus the value of her house, plus the theft already committed, plus punitive damages for attempted murder-for-profit conspiracy? Linda lunged at me again, but the officers restrained her. "You ungrateful bitch, we gave you life. You owe us everything." "I owe you nothing," I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "You gave me life, but you tried to steal it back with compound interest. Every achievement I earned, you claimed credit. Every dollar I saved, you felt entitled to. Every boundary I set, you called betrayal." I pulled out the prepared statement Marisol had helped me write, the one I'd practiced in the mirror until I could say it without crying. "Linda and Howard Pierce," I read, my voice steady and clear. "You are hereby notified that all contact must go through my attorney. Any attempt to approach me, call me, or communicate through third parties will be considered harassment and prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Your access to my financial accounts is permanently revoked. Your emergency contact status is terminated. Your next of kin designation is nullified." The hotel manager appeared with a lockbox, and I made a show of removing every key, every password, every document they might have had access to, placing each in the box with theatrical precision. "Furthermore," I continued, "the house at 4827 Stonefield Drive remains solely in my name. Any attempt to file false claims, forge documents, or assert ownership will result in additional criminal charges." But the best part, I smiled, and it felt like freedom. "Remember that tracking app you put on my phone? It's been recording for 3 months. Every conversation, every plan, every admission of guilt. It's all admissible in Colorado, and it's all backed up to 3 different cloud services plus my attorney's secured server." Marcus cued the final recording, the one from last night, when they didn't know I was listening from the bathroom, Linda's voice. "After we get the house, we can have her committed. PTSD makes it easy. 1 signature tomorrow night and she's in a facility. We're her guardians, and everything is ours." Howard's voice. "The wedding deposit is non-refundable anyway, even if she figures it out. We keep the $15,000. Linda. 20 years of raising that ungrateful brat finally pays off tomorrow." The ballroom erupted. Someone shouted, "Shame!" Others were crying. Nathan's mother had to be restrained from physically attacking Linda herself. "Officer Hart," I said formally, "I'd like to press full charges. Every applicable statute, every possible enhancement. No plea deals, no reduced sentences." "Copy that, ma'am," Dylan said, beginning to read Miranda rights as his backup officers prepared to escort my parents out. But Linda had one more card to play. "You'll be alone," she shrieked. "No family, no parents. You'll die alone and unloved." I looked at Nathan, at his family who'd embraced me without conditions, at Marisol, who'd become like a sister, at my army family scattered throughout the room, at Ruth Ellison, who'd protected me like the grandmother I'd never had. "I haven't been alone since the day I stopped being your property," I said. "I found real family, people who love me without calculating interest rates." The officers began moving Linda and Howard toward the exit. The photo booth captured their perp walk, Linda's makeup streaming down her face. Howard's suit disheveled, both in handcuffs. "Wait," I called out. Everyone stopped. "There's one more thing." I walked to the cake table, where our beautiful three-tiered engagement cake stood untouched. I picked up the knife, cut 2 small pieces, and placed them on plates. "Prison commissary doesn't have cake," I said, handing the plates to the officers. "Consider it their last taste of the life they tried to steal from me. The life they'll be paying for with interest for the next 20 years? The ballroom erupted in applause. The applause died slowly, like rain after a storm. In its wake came something I'd never experienced in my 31 years, silence without tension. No walking on eggshells, no calculating the emotional cost of each word. Just quiet. I stood in the center of the ballroom, watching the officers escort Linda and Howard through the grand doors. Their voices echoed from the hallway, Linda shrieking about lawsuits, Howard demanding a phone call until the elevator doors cut them off completely. "Avery," Nathan said softly, his hand finding mine. "What do you need?" I looked around the room. 200 guests, half with phones still recording, the other half in various stages of shock. The cake stood pristine except for the 2 missing pieces. The photo booth blinked steadily, still documenting everything. "I need to finish this properly," I said, taking the microphone one more time. "Everyone, please," I began, my voice hoarse but determined. "I need you to understand something. What you witnessed tonight wasn't revenge, it was self-defense." Chairs scraped as people sat back down, giving me their full attention. For 27 years, I believed love came with terms and conditions, that every hug had a hidden invoice, that being family meant being owned. I paused, finding my composure. I joined the Army not out of patriotism, though that came later, but to escape. I survived 3 deployments in Afghanistan, but I was more afraid of coming home than I was of IEDs. Ruth Ellison stood up. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the microphone. I nodded, grateful for the break. "I've been Avery's landlord for 3 years," Ruth said, her voice clear and strong. "I've also been watching this slow-motion crime for just as long. When Linda Pierce came to my office trying to steal her daughter's house, I started documenting everything, every visit, every threat, every bribe attempt." She pulled out a thick folder. 43 separate incidents, all recorded, all reported to Adult Protective Services. They said without Avery's cooperation, they couldn't act. Well, tonight, she acted. "Thank you, Ruth," I said, taking back the microphone. "But there's more you all need to know." I pulled out my phone, showing the final piece of evidence, a document I'd kept hidden even from Nathan. "This is my enlistment contract from 8 years ago. Look at the emergency contact. Look at the beneficiary." I projected it onto the screen. "They're blank. I left them blank rather than put my parents' names. The recruiting sergeant asked me 3 times if I was sure. I told him I'd rather the government keep the money than let my parents profit from my death." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "The Army became my family." I continued. "They taught me about honor without price tags, loyalty without interest rates, sacrifice without expecting repayment. My squad leader, Sergeant First Class Thompson, died saving 3 of us from an ambush. His last words weren't about what we owed him. They were, 'Tell my kids I love them.' I felt tears finally coming, but I didn't stop them. That's what family is supposed to be. Love without ledgers, protection without invoices, sacrifice without expecting compound interest." Marisol stepped forward with a stack of papers. "These are the official documents. Avery, we need your signature on the criminal complaints and the civil suit." I signed each document deliberately, the photo booth capturing every stroke of the pen. Where Linda and Howard had tried to force my signature in shadows and deception, I signed in full view of 200 witnesses. "Additionally," Marisol announced, "I've prepared something else." She handed me a different set of papers. "Legal documentation permanently severing all familial financial ties. After tonight, they have no legal claim to inheritance. No right to make medical decisions if you're incapacitated. No authority to claim your body if God forbid something happens to you. Who would have those rights? Someone asked from the crowd. I looked at Nathan, then at his parents, Beth and Robert, who'd welcomed me without questions or conditions. I'm establishing a trust. Nathan is primary, with Beth and Robert Brooks as secondary decision-makers. My military family, specifically Rodriguez, Martinez, and Johnson from my unit, are tertiary. You're choosing us. Beth's voice broke as she stood up, tears streaming down her face. You chose me first, I replied simply. Without asking for anything in return, the room was quiet for a moment before Marcus, the DJ, spoke up. Ma'am, I've been recording this entire event for your protection. The footage is yours. What do you want to do with it? I thought for a moment. Keep recording. I want everything documented. But Marcus, I managed a small smile. After we're done with the legal stuff, could you play something upbeat? This is still supposed to be an engagement party. Roger that, he said with a veteran's understanding. Officer Dylan Hart returned to the ballroom, his notebook out. Ms. Monroe, I need to inform you that your parents are being processed at the station. They're both requesting contact with you. No, I said firmly. All communication goes through Ms. Vega. Understood. Also, the FBI agent, Martinez, is already en route. The life insurance fraud aspect escalated this to federal jurisdiction. I nodded, then turned back to the crowd. For those of you who are Linda and Howard's friends or family, I don't expect you to choose sides, but I do expect you to respect my boundaries. Anyone who tries to pass messages, guilt me about family loyalty, or suggests I'm overreacting will be immediately cut from my life. Aunt Diane stood up. Avery, honey, I choose you. I've watched my sister destroy everything she touches for 40 years. Tonight, you did what I never had the courage to do. Others stood cousins I barely knew, family friends who'd suspected but never spoke up, Linda's book club members who'd endured her lies for years. We believe you, an elderly woman said. We've always seen it. But she was so convincing in public. That's how it works, I said. The public face and the private horror. The gaslighting that makes you question your own reality. The guilt that makes you think you're the problem. Nathan's father, Robert, stood up. Avery, Beth and I want to say something. We've watched you with our son for 3 years. We've seen you flinch when voices get raised. We've noticed how you apologize for things that aren't your fault. We suspected something was wrong, but we didn't know how to help. You helped by just being normal, I said, my voice cracking. Sunday dinners where no one kept score. Holidays where gifts didn't come with contracts. You showed me what family could be. The signing continued, document after document, each one another wall between me and the people who'd raised me to be their retirement plan. Eli documented every signature, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. Ms. Monroe, the hotel manager, appeared with his own folder. The hotel supports you completely. We're providing all security footage and offering to testify about what we witnessed. Additionally, we're banning Howard and Linda Pierce from all our properties. Thank you, I said, meaning it deeply. As I signed the last document, a healthcare directive ensuring my parents could never make medical decisions for me, Nathan whispered in my ear, "You know what this means?" "What?" I asked. "We get to have the wedding we actually want. No Pierce Family Services LLC. No hidden agendas. Just us and the people who really love us." I looked around the room at the faces of chosen family, biological family who'd chosen me back, and strangers who'd become witnesses to my liberation. "You still want to marry me after all this?" I asked, half joking but needing to hear it. Nathan took the microphone. "Avery Monroe, you just stood up to your worst nightmare with more courage than most people show in a lifetime. You chose truth over comfort, justice over silence. So yes, I still want to marry you. More than ever." The room erupted again, this time in genuine celebration. "But first," I said, taking back the microphone for one last announcement, I have something to say to anyone out there living with financial abuse, emotional manipulation, or family members who see you as property instead of a person. I looked directly at the photo booth camera, knowing this video would likely go viral within hours. You are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not overreacting. You deserve love without price tags, support without strings, and family who values you breathing more than they value your death benefits. It's not your fault, and it's okay to fight back. The music came back softly. Not Ed Sheeran this time, but something Marcus chose himself, Survivor by Destiny's Child. A few people laughed, breaking the tension completely. The fairy lights still twinkled overhead, indifferent to the drama they'd witnessed. I stood there, pen still in my hand from the last signature, watching hotel staff quietly gather the scattered fraud documents into evidence bags. Each paper whispered its way into plastic, sealed and labeled. The sound was oddly satisfying, like listening to handcuffs click. Nathan's mother, Beth, approached with a wet towel filled with ice. "For your cheek, sweetheart." She pressed it gently against the swelling, her touch so careful it made me want to cry all over again. This was what maternal care looked like without a price tag attached. The photo booth printed its final strip of the evening 4 frames showing the exact moment of my liberation. Frame 1, signing the last document. Frame 2, looking up at Nathan. Frame 3, the room applauding. Frame 4, me, finally, genuinely smiling. "Keep that one," Marcus said, handing me the strip. "That's the real you." Eli closed his laptop with a satisfied snap. "Every transaction tracked, every document backed up, every recording secured. They won't wiggle out of this. Avery, the forensic trail is bulletproof." Through the ballroom's tall windows, I could see the police cars pulling away, their red and blue lights fading into Denver's skyline. Inside those cars were the 2 people who'd given me life but tried to bill me for it, with interest compounded daily for 31 years. "Avery," Ruth Ellison approached with something in her hand. "I've been saving this for the right moment." She handed me an envelope, aged and yellow. My name was written on it in shaky handwriting I recognized immediately, my grandmother's, Linda's mother, who died when I was deployed. "She gave this to me before she passed," Ruth explained. "Said to give it to you when you were finally free. Somehow, she knew this day would come." I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photo of my grandmother holding me as a baby. The letter was brief. "My darling Avery, if you're reading this, you've finally escaped. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from my own daughter. I saw what she was, but I was too weak to stop it. The photo is to remind you you were born innocent. What they did to you was never your fault. Live free, my brave girl. Love, Grandma Rose. P.S. Check my old music box in storage unit 43. The real will is hidden in the bottom." My hands shook. "There's another will." Ruth smiled. "She left everything to you, bypassing Linda completely, about $200,000 in bonds and securities. Linda never knew they existed." The room had gone quiet again, everyone sensing this was something sacred. Even the photo booth had stopped its clicking, as if giving us this moment of privacy. I tucked the letter against my heart, then looked around the room at the chaos, the cake with 2 symbolic pieces missing, the fairy lights that had witnessed everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice stronger now. "The bar is still open, the food is still warm, and despite everything, this is still my engagement party. If you're willing to stay and celebrate the beginning of my actual life, Nathan and I would be honored." The room erupted in agreement. Someone started clapping slowly, then others joined, until the applause thundered off the walls, not for a performance this time, but for survival. Rodriguez, my army buddy, raised her glass. "To Avery Monroe, who survived 3 tours in Afghanistan and 1 tour in hell, and came out standing, hooah." The other veterans responded in unison. The party that followed was surreal. People danced. The cake was eaten all except those 2 pieces, which the hotel manager had photographed and preserved as evidence. Stories were shared, not about Linda and Howard, but about survival, about chosen families, about freedom. At 11:43 p.m., Marisol received a text. The FBI has taken custody of your parents. Federal charges filed. No bail until arraignment Monday. Monday, I repeated. They'll spend the weekend in federal holding. In separate cells, she added with satisfaction. Nathan pulled me onto the dance floor for one last song. As we swayed together, he whispered, "How do you feel?" Like I just signed my own Declaration of Independence. I answered, "Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." He asked, "More like life, liberty, and the pursuit of a happiness that doesn't require a payment plan." As the evening wound down, I stood by the entrance, personally thanking each guest for witnessing my truth. Some hugged me, others slipped me business cards for therapists who specialized in family trauma, and Aunt Diane pressed a flash drive into my hand. 40 years of evidence, she whispered. The photo booth staff began packing up their equipment. The lead technician handed me a hard drive. "Every second of tonight, ma'am. 3 copies, one for you, one for your lawyer, one for the FBI. On the house." "Thank you," I said, clutching it like a lifeline. The ballroom slowly emptied until it was just Nathan, his parents, Marisol, and me. The fairy lights were turned off one section at a time, like stars going out. The cake table was cleared, the gift table emptied, though we'd ask guests to donate to a domestic violence shelter instead of bringing presents. I walked to the spot where Linda had slapped me, where the whole truth had begun to spill out. The marble floor showed no trace of the violence, the tears, the confrontation. But I knew it had happened. 200 witnesses knew. The cameras knew. The law knew. "Ready to go home?" Nathan asked, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. I looked at the empty ballroom one last time. In a few hours, the hotel staff would reset everything for tomorrow's event, maybe a wedding, maybe another engagement party, maybe a corporate gathering. No one would know that a woman had signed her freedom here, that parents had been arrested here, that a 31-year war had ended here. "You know," I said to Nathan as we walked toward the exit. "They were wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "They said I ruined everything." I paused at the doorway, looking back at the space where I'd reclaimed my life. But I didn't ruin anything. The exit door was heavy, brass and glass, reflecting our images back at us. Nathan steady beside me, my cheek still slightly swollen but my eyes clear for the first time in decades. I pushed it open, stepping into the cool Denver night. The city lights sparkled below us, full of possibility. Behind us, the photo booth's memory card held the evidence. Ahead of us, a life without emotional invoices or manipulation dressed as love. "You ruined everything," I said to the night air, to the parents who could no longer hear me, to the universe that had finally tipped in my favor. "No." I took Nathan's hand, walked toward our car, toward our future, toward a life where love didn't come with terms and conditions. I just took back everything. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. Your experiences and perspectives mean everything to me.